Hello, 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 and welcome to Coder Radio. Today I'm speaking with Jamie Taylor, who is, of course, the host of the Modern.NET podcast, among other things. A pretty big .NET guy. Loves some C's that are sharp. It's a great conversation. We kind of jump around. It's less .NET focused than you think. A lot on SpecKit, which is something I was very unaware of, but has been released by GitHub as part of their frankly large and somewhat confusing array of developer tools powered by AI. Yeah, it's a great chat. We also accidentally kind of stumble upon, I think it's called Moltbot now, but it was called the Clawbot when we recorded it, which subsequently in the 48, 72 hours since the recording has just blown up all over Twitter and Reddit. It's the, host it yourself AI. It's pretty cool. I'm actually going to be doing a tutorial on getting that set up on a home Linux server, possibly a Mac Mini. So fun stuff to look forward to. Little bit of housekeeping. So the Discord server, always check it out. We're adding some policies there because as things are growing, we seem to have gotten the attention of a little bit of recruiter or what looks like dev shop spam of people basically soliciting contracting work in the Gen channel. So me decided that I added a looking for work channel. So if you're a legitimate community member and you're between contracts or something like that, you can totally post in there. But if you sign up for the Discord today and your first thing is very much a solicitation, you will probably have that message deleted and possibly get banned. So trying to balance it out. Obviously, we don't want any false positives. Joining the server and doing an intro in Gen is totally fine. If it's obviously, come please hire me, the Gen chat is not the appropriate place for that. Having said that, the looking for work channel is, and that was newly created. It's been up for about a week, and it's totally fine to. We have folks doing CV/resume critiques and suggestions on maybe cleaning up GitHub profiles, things like that. So trying to kind of balance the equities here, right? Of obviously there's a lot of turmoil in the industry right now. Folks are indeed looking for work, but Gen Chat really is supposed to be just a Gen Chat. So, and I know especially a few of the most active Discorders have complained, which is why we made this change. So great. Also, swag is on the way. I was hoping to see proofs this week. Looks like it didn't happen. Probably next week. Certainly should be up by the end of February. And we're going to do a couple competitions to actually, win free swag. So we'll go from there. All right. As always, check out alice.dev if you need any data work or development work done. And here's the show. All right. I've got Jamie Taylor of the Modern.NET podcast, and I believe a Microsoft MVP. Am I correct?
That is correct. Michael. Thank you ever so much for having me. I just want to say real quick before we do anything. First time, long time, right? I've been listening to the show since the beginning. Well, maybe not the beginning, but all the way back when it was, Jupiter Broadcasting and stuff. So big fan of you, big fan of the show as well.
Awesome. I appreciate it. But I was listening to your show when it was called the, I believe, .NET Core podcast.
Thank you very much.
back in the ancient times, right?
Yeah, in the before times.
So I understand you're here to take me to school today. We were chatting in the Discord, which folks, you should join the Discord, about something called SpecKit, which went right over my head. So what the hell is that?
Yeah, so first thing we need to say is obviously in computer science, naming things is one of the difficult things to do, right? So there's loads of different things called SpecKit. But I'm hoping that we can talk about something very specific today that is a GitHub release. So it's on GitHub. You go to github.com/github/SpecKit. And the idea is it's a kind of like a specification-driven toolkit for whichever AI agent you want to involve. Now, obviously, it's a GitHub project, so they probably want you to use Copilot, but I don't use Copilot, so I can't really say how good it is. But the idea is you open SpecKit in a directory with your code, and you say, hey, agent, we're going to work on some stuff, but I'm going to provide you with the specification and a plan and a bunch of tasks, and then you're going to do it. So the idea is it's back and forth, building up a very detailed plan of what you want to do. Rather than going, hey, AI, build me the thing. It's like, here's all of the information you need and maybe some research stuff. Now go build it, right? Which sounds like a really big, lofty task, but actually, SpecKit helps you to do that by, if there are gaps in what you're telling the LLM, it says, hey, go to Google or your search engine of choice, or look in the code and fill in the gaps of knowledge and tell the user what you've found, right?
Interesting. So is it almost like you're developing a project plan up front and then feeding that in, or is it conversational?
So it's kind of a bit of both. The idea is that, we live in a world where the code is king and the specification is kind of this woolly thing that somebody else writes. Maybe a business person, maybe a BA of some kind, maybe a project manager of some kind, someone who probably doesn't know much about the technology you're going to implement. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? We always want to try and delay the technology decisions until the last minute, because then that gives us more options to play with. So in that respect, having someone who isn't technical, who isn't an engineer of some kind, having them write the spec makes that easier, because they don't know what an ORM is or what programming language you're going to use, right? So you get to make that decision. And we've done that for a very long time, where we'll write a spec and then we'll build the feature. Well, this is actually flipping it on its head, where what you want to do is you want to keep the specification in source code, because then you can see where you've come from. So rather than having your Jira tickets or your Trello tickets or whatever separate, you keep it all in-house in the code base, and then you can see how we got to where we are. So every time you build a feature, there's a bunch of files that you create with SpecKit that outline how that feature is meant to be built. And then you finish that feature, merge back to main, and carry on with your life, make another feature, merge back to main. And then there's this, like, a record of who built what and when and what was the decisions, almost like having an ADR, like a architecture design record. And the idea, you're working with the LLM to help you write those, and then you say to the LLM, I'm happy with that. Now, either you can go write the code, or I'll go write the code, or we'll write the code together. Or maybe I'll spawn 12 of you to write a whole bunch of code, and I'll write some code, and then eventually we'll come back together and we'll have the feature written, right? And like I said, I feel like it gives you better results than just going, hey, AI, write me the thing, right?
Right. So you mentioned you can pick NA, so it supports all the kind of like the Claudes, the ChatGPTs of world, most of the big boys, right?
Yep, that's right.
I could totally see going greenfield with this and saying, okay, I want to build, I don't know, I out of ideas today. Let's say a to-do list app, because that's what you do when you're building things. I guess the first thing everybody builds is a to-do list. I could totally see writing, setting it up with SpecKit in it. I'm on my way. What if you have an existing project, which I think most of us do, right? Kind of brownfield, kind of enterprisey. Where does SpecKit come in there?
Okay. So here's my workflow, right? I realize we're going elbow deep straight away, but let's
talk
through my workflow. Yeah, why not, right? So I've got a pre-existing project. Maybe I've been brought onto a project, or maybe it's something I've been working on for ages and I've just sort of left to the wayside for a little while. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, before I even involve SpecKit, hey, AI helper, it's been forever since I looked at this, or I'm brand new to the team. Help me to get onboarded by go and read through the code and give me an idea of where the different modules are. Maybe if I'm in object oriented, maybe where all the classes are, where all the helper functions are, which libraries we're using, what technologies are we using. I don't even know yet, right? Hopefully that's already been done, because we're in that world now. So hopefully someone on the team's already done that and they're keeping that up to date. But if not, hey, AI, I'm using Claude. So hey, Claude, go deep dive into the code and give me some documentation to get me started. And from there, I can say, okay, cool. Now we've got SpecKit there, SpecKit init, which just basically says, go create a bunch of folders in my project that are specific to the LLM that I use. So I'm using Claude Code. You may be using Copilot, or you might be using Qwen 3 or Windsurf, or any of the other supported AI systems. And what it will do is it'll dump a bunch of script files in there. So some of these, this is where it gets a bit confusing because I said script files. And so some of them are PowerShell. You can have them in PowerShell or Bash. Okay. And then there are markdown files that sit with it. So, for instance, with Claude, you can have slash commands. So you can put forward slash and then the name of something. And then if there is a markdown file, it will read through the markdown file and process that. These work a little bit different. There's a markdown file that links to a shell script or a PowerShell script. And those PowerShell scripts have like helper functions, like maybe every so often it needs to clear the context, or maybe it needs to read something from the user. So it sets up a whole bunch of stuff about how it should behave, as well as telling the LLM, okay, so the user is about to give you a specification for a thing. Be ready to create like a Git branch if there isn't one, and get ready to make sure we're on main and we've pulled recently, so that then when you create the branch, you're not creating it from an old version of main, right? So there's a whole bunch of setup for it. And if I'm Brownfield, I what I'm going to do is I'm going to give SpecKit, I'm going to install in inverted commas SpecKit and init it, and then I'm going to say, hey SpecKit, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, go create a constitution, right? So the constitution is this markdown file that sets up the all of the different coding standards for the particular project we're looking at. So it might set up things like always use a linter, use this particular editor config, or test-driven development, or so I'm from a .NET C# land, so it might say make sure that you do .NET format, which is kind of like linting, but not 100% every time.
Like a Rubocop or a Flake kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. Setting up the rules of how the code should be written, and then setting up things like, if you are doing test-driven development, this much code coverage is a bare minimum, or maybe, first-party packages first, then widely supported third-party packages, and then maybe experimental ones if there isn't something that supports what we want to do. So the first thing it does is it sets that up, and then that way, regardless of what you ask your LLM to write, it will always look at that first and say, am I about to write something that's insecure, that violates the Constitution, that, so you've got that operating environment already. And because these are markdown files, you can jump in and edit them as you go, or you can gently nudge the LLM as it's writing them and say, actually, yeah, that's great, but maybe I care about, because maybe this is a web app, maybe I care about what OWASP have to say. So I go and say, go find the rules that OWASP recommend for this type of application development. And then grab those, put that in the constitution, and then that way you might not get, so you'll be protected against things like SQL injection, things like that, and cross-site scripting, and all of these wonderful things that you no longer have to worry about, because all the code that you're going to write with this LLM is already protected against. So that's the first thing it does. So yeah, you do spec first. So that's specification. And you say, here's the spec. I'm thinking like project manager, BA level. This is what we want, a feature that allows the customer to check out. We're not talking about technology. We're not talking about the hows. We're not talking about the whys. We're talking about the whats. And you can be as detailed as you can, or just say, build me a checkout system, whatever, right? I like to put, and this is going to scare some folks because some folks don't like lots of typing of words. They like to jump in with the code, but I like to put in as much detail as I can. So I'll probably do 3 or 4 paragraphs of this is my specification for this one feature, and I'll go ahead and hit return. What happens then is SpecKit goes, cool, that's awesome. Hey, LLM, the user has given you this specification. I want you to read through it, split it into an actual specification, so split it into like user stories and functional requirements and things like what was the user not clear about, that kind of thing. So it automatically starts asking you questions about, well, you said a checkout system and I can't see that there is a store in this kind of app. Are you sure that you want a checkout system for this web API? I think you've got this project the wrong way around. So it starts to ask you these questions about what you want, what technologies you want, all this kind of stuff. And then all the way through that, you can gently nudge the LLM in different directions. I am talking lots, so please do not interrupt me.
Great. So I just want to clarify something. So is SpecKit basically, I mean, this is a wild simplification, but it's almost like guardrails and a go-between you and the LLM, right? So
Yeah.
instead of like opening Claude CLI or whatever and saying, build me a, like you said, checkout page, I don't know, with Paddle or Stripe or something like that.
Mhm.
SpecKit's like, in my constitution, we always use Ruby, we always use Stripe. I'm just making this up, right? This is our RubuCop file. You must follow these rules as defined in this file. We never, ever, ever, I don't know, we never, ever want to like write inline raw SQL, right? Because that's an attack vector in Rails. It's someone's going to correct me and say there's ways to do it safely. I know, but I'm trying to give a simple case, right? So like a common thing, like I use Warp a lot, and a common thing will be like, I'll be like, I want to copy these files from this server to that server, right? I use it for a lot of DevOps stuff. And I've learned that the trick is to always, because I use Claude underneath, always ask it, do you understand what I actually mean? And
yes,
do you have any questions? Right, just like you would with like an intern, right, or a a super junior developer. And is SpecKit kind of doing that? Because it sounds like it is. It sounds like you write the constitution, and if let's say Claude or whatever comes back with, well, I'm going to do it like this, SpecKit would actually, before even talking to you, it seems like, be like, no, that violates this rule of you must pass, whatever this .NET validator is, or you must use libraries only. I'm assuming you could say all kinds of things, right? Like I only want to use NuGet packages published by Microsoft, theoretically, if you had, right? Is it doing that proactively, or is that still something you have to intervene?
So what it's doing is it's putting your LLM agent, assistant, whatever, in that mode already. So it's telling you what the rules are. So then when it goes away and generates that code, it already knows I'm not allowed to use, for instance, I'm only allowed to use Microsoft NuGet packages, or if, I'm only allowed to use these particular things that are available in my Ruby environment. And maybe I'm not allowed to use this kind of coding or that kind of coding, right? It then I'm trying to think of things that are abstract enough that probably apply to lots of different languages rather than just .NET things, because then only I understand.
How about where applicable, always use the ORM, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter which ORM.
Right.
But so just to like really hammer down on this point, it's not that it's a middleman; it's that it's actually seeding the context, and when necessary, when the context has to be cleared, it's re-updating the context to the current state with the current rules based on your initial creation of the spec per feature. I know that sounded very persnickety, but is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the idea is you create a feature by defining a spec, then defining how the plan, and then splitting it into tasks. And then if we go 10,000 foot view, right, you have a feature that you have. So somebody comes to you and says, I want a checkout feature. That's your feature. Right. So you create the spec for the feature. It needs to use, these kinds of, I'm expecting to be able to click a button and input my credit card details. How they get there, it doesn't matter. Input my address details, how they get there, it doesn't matter. But those need to be validated. Then the plan is the how, not the what. So you're saying in the plan, so we're going to use Stripe, and we're going to use this particular type of ORM for our Ruby app. Because we don't want to use SQL injection, and then from the spec and the plan, and you've gone round in circles a few times with both of those steps to make sure that the coding agent, I'm trying to remain technology agnostic, right? So then the coding agent is then pointed in the right direction, it's shoved in the right direction of, you're going to use these particular projects, these particular processes, these particular technologies. Then you say, cool, you've got the plan, you've got the spec, and the other thing it does is during the plan phase, it actually goes and does the research. So what it will do is it will go, oh, cool, we're using Ruby version, I'm going to make up a number, 2.6. That's probably not even a version of Ruby, but let's say we are, right? We're using Ruby version 2.6. And then it will go, cool, I will do a web search for Ruby 2.6 ORM best practices and Ruby 2.6 Stripe compatibility and Stripe documentation for this particular version of Stripe, right? So then it grabs all of that information, does all of that research ahead of time. The same stuff that you or I would do if we were doing it, right? We get to the point where we're about to implement the Stripe API, and we go and read the API and go, oh, right, yeah, that's how we do it. We need to have a client ID and, maybe an OAuth token or whatever, right? And then what will happen is it does that all ahead of time, stores that in the plan. And then when you come around to breaking that plan into tasks by running the task command, it looks at the plan and goes, cool, I think there's about 70 tasks there. And it breaks it down into individual things. So like create this Ruby file that represents the controller. Excellent. Now install the package. Excellent. So then it's like piecemeal steps, like you would a junior developer, right? You would ask a junior developer to do this one step at a time. Create the controller. Now add the package to our, I think it's a Ruby gem lock file or something like that, right? And then we write a test to make sure that if we're doing test-driven development, write a test to make sure that it works, but it's going to fail and then it actually says in the test step, this step will fail because we haven't written the code yet. So then it gets to that point. Then the next step might be run all the tests and expect that previous step to fail, right? So it's doing what you or I would do, just like as a checkbox list in Markdown. So you can actually follow along if you want to. So then the idea is either you can take over or the LLM can take over. And then because the constitution's in place, it will start making sure that the code it's writing matches that constitution. And I've also found this, if I write code that gets around the constitution, I will be gently nudged, right? So if I tell the LLM, I'm going to split the work between you and me or between two agents or whatever, and I tell one agent or I tell me to completely ignore the constitution, as the other agent is working through the code, it will spot where I've done things where maybe I've done SQL injection, and it'll go, oh, hang on, I've noticed some SQL injection there. Let me fix that while I'm here, just like you or I.
So that's right? Interesting. So it is proactive in the way of, I see something that violates the constraints you've set up, even if I didn't do it, right? Even if you did it, the user.
Yeah, because what that's doing is it's putting the LLM in that position where it's ready to do those kinds of reviews as it's working on the code, right?
Right. That's pretty good. So what are the limitations? I'm assuming context windows can get a little challenging as the projects get bigger, right? But is that offset by the ONDIS file?
So I would say, yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the main limitations is the context window. Okay. The other limitation is like the thought process. You've got to really remember that as you work through each of the steps, the spec, then the plan, then the implement, what you are inputting into the LLM, you are changing your role, not its role, right? So you are working from, writing the spec as a PM, as a business analyst, as a non-technical person who just wants a button, and when they push the button, the bacon pops out the other end or whatever, right? If you think about it like that, right? Writing a spec is, I push the button, I get bacon. Right. Sorry for our non-bacon eating friends, but that's the example I've come up with.
Bacon.
Yeah, it could be. It could be vegan bacon. It could be faking. It could be whatever. Right? You push the button.
Whatever breakfast meat or pseudo meat you need it to be.
Absolutely. You push the button and something yummy comes out the other side. Right. That's the level you're thinking when you're doing the spec. Then when you do the plan, you're thinking, when I push the button, it needs to call this API, which tells that person to go make me my breakfast thing and then to bring it to me, right? So you're thinking it's slightly different levels. And then what you need to be doing is you need to be watching what the LLM is doing. And the more effort you put into spec and plan of observing and pointing in the right direction, the less effort you need to put in when it comes to telling it to implement the tasks, right? So there's this almost like a funnel of the amount of information you need to give it. You need to give loads of information in the spec side and then the plan side. And then when you get to implementation, you don't have to worry about it so much. You do have to watch what it's writing. I'm not saying just put it in YOLO mode and then submit the code, right? So that's the first big limitation, is that like you really need to know and understand the problem you want to solve.
I mean, if you're really brave and you want to do that, no one's stopping you, per se. Just saying.
Yes, the only downside to that is whenever I've told people about this kind of thing or any kind of AI LLM based coding system, is that whatever you commit is attached to your name, regardless of whether you wrote it or not, right?
Yes.
So, just saying, hey, but Claude wrote this or but Copilot wrote this, that's not going to fly with customers, clients, managers, whoever you're dealing with, right?
People seem to be really picky about their login and checkout pages in particular working. I don't know why. It's the big deal. It's God.
Yeah.
So are you using this like daily, or how deep are you into this, Jamie?
Oh, yeah. So I'm using this for majority personal projects, but there are a few other projects I've been working on. There are client-based where I've had permission. That's the really important thing. Not necessarily to ask permission, but just to say, hey, I'm going to be using this tool, just so you know. But it's going through a person for a code review before it hits your people for code review, right? So then everybody's aware. Because the last thing you want to do is say to people, yeah, cool, I've built your app and it took me 25 minutes, but also it was entirely vibe coded, because they may have something to say about, well, what does the license of the code mean and all that kind of stuff, right? I've done my own due diligence, but I always ask people to do their own due diligence as well, right? You don't want to be caught out by that.
I think we're in a strange place right now of, there's a really loud contingent of folks who don't want these tools used at all.
Yeah.
And then there's just my LinkedIn is just full of like former sales bros who are just vibe coding stuff. And I gotta be honest, I'm a little impressed. like you can't believe you actually did that yourself. Now, God knows how maintainable, whatever. I have a million questions, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like putting your head in the sand on this stuff is like, for instance, I use Warp all the time, mostly for like Linuxy commands, right? Like terminal scripting. For whatever reason, in all my years of experience doing this crap, I cannot for the life of me get the syntax for rsync down. Just can't. I have a mental block, but you know who knows it? Claude. I just tell Claude, I'm here's the rsync I'm trying to do. What did I do wrong? And it's like, oh, you're an idiot. You missed, whatever it was. And I don't really feel bad about that. I don't think I should, do you want me to bill you extra time for me to painstakingly try to fix my stupid rsync command? Or do you want to like have this done in 0.5 seconds?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Then
that speaks volumes to me, because I don't use right-click copy-paste when I'm moving files around, even if it's on the same machine across different drives.
Yeah,
right?
I don't trust the GUI.
Yeah, exactly right. It's always rsync, because I know that I can say to it, hey, when you're done, verify everything, right? Do the checksums and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. I've written enough GUIs to know don't trust the GUI.
Yep, 100%. So some of the projects that I've worked on are some of my own projects. So I've got a open source library for ASP.NET Core that attempts to, I mentioned OWASP earlier on. So that's it used to be the Open Web Application Security Project, but now it's the Open Worldwide Application Security Project. It's not just web anymore. So I've got this project that attempts to inject HTTP headers into an ASP.NET Core application that sets it up for best case scenario for security, right? So it does like all of the things to do with cross-site scripting, to do with content security policy, things like that, right? It doesn't really do content security policy because that's a difficult one to do, but it is on my plan. How do I do this? But the what I'm getting at is that like with that one, I actually have a spec kit setup in that directory, and I say, right, cool, I want to add this new header. Hey, LLM, go do all the research for me. And then what I do is I get to the point where I tell it, create me a list of tasks, and then I do it, right? Because it's done all the research for me. In 10 minutes, it's read up about the particular HTTP header. It's read up about the rules. It's read up about the directive values. It's read up all of this stuff and gotten ready to write the documentation for me, because I have like a static site that has documentation for the library. Then all I have to do is go implement the code using the checklist it's given me for implement this thing, then this thing, then this thing, write this test, and then boom, it's done. And so it helps me to get productive with actually building these HTTP headers. But I have a couple of other like client pieces of work, unfortunately wrapped behind NDAs. But and I'm sure you have the same sort of thing, Mike. But like where I've literally gone, I will spend 20 minutes writing a spec as detailed as I can. And I've actually found that it will go, hey, you didn't mention this. What if this happens? What if that happens? Which is
right.
Really
here's
cool.
A hole in your user story, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then I'll do the spec, then the plan, then implement. But the key thing, and this is a pro tip for anyone who wants to try out spec kit, is if you're doing it that spec, so you do spec, plan, implement, clear the context between each one, right? Because right, especially in the middle when you come to do the plan, it's going to do a whole bunch of research. It's going to write a whole bunch of markdown files to do with like what it thinks the data model should be, what it thinks the contract should be, which libraries to use, where to go to get the library information for the API calls and stuff. So it's going to create you almost like a wiki just for this one feature. So you want to clear the context every time you complete one of the steps. And then the other thing you can do is you get to that the break into tasks step, which is just called tasks. It then ships with a command to analyze everything it's done so far and look for yet another set of gaps in user stories or gaps in knowledge. So like you can have it check its homework, if that makes sense.
So is it analyzing against the original spec for that feature or just general analysis?
So it does both. So what it does is it goes back to the original spec, reads through it to double check that there aren't any more gaps in those user stories or assumptions. And then it goes, cool. So based on this spec, have a look at the plan. Does the plan match the spec? Cool. The plan matches the spec. Now look at the list of tasks. Does the task match the plan, which matches the spec? Excellent. Now, in any of the research it did it actually match the Constitution as well? Because it's possible that it didn't take into account the Constitution because maybe the API you're building against is perhaps not as secure as you are. So then is there anything in, like, let's say there's a magical API out there that you can, so you're doing database as a service, right? Let's say you're doing database as a service, and instead of passing in something to do with the ORM you're using, you can actually just pass SQL over the wire, which means the SQL injection at that end, which means that your code has to be bulletproof before it sends that SQL injection down the pipe. But because it's accepting insecure code, your code has to be more secure. So then that is seen as a violation of the Constitution. And then what will happen is your AI agent, your LLM will go back and say, right, cool, I can see that it's insecure at the other end, at my service end that I'm calling. Maybe I have to do something here to parameterize or to make sure that my payload that I send to them is as secure as possible. So then it's almost like it's double checking everything from the ground up. That makes sense?
No, it does. Yeah. So that seems like something you'd want to do after every single feature, right? Basically, I mean, I could imagine saying run all the unit tests, then analyze, and then maybe run the tests again if you change anything. I don't know. RAM's not cheap anymore, but we're running locally, presumably for dev. So
yeah, RAM on your machine is cheap because it's already there, right?
Because you already paid for it back before things went crazy.
And hey, no, I was just going to make a joke about if you've bought Apple hardware, you've probably got a better deal for RAM somehow than what is going on in the world at the minute.
You want to talk about good deals on Apple hardware? We'll take a minute here. I have in front of me, because I do all the recording still on the Mac, because just audio reliability. Yep. This is a M2 MacBook Pro that I've had I bought it right when the M2s came out. It's an M2 Max, whatever. Who cares? It's a fancy one. I have wisely purchased the Apple Care Plus accidental damage. You listened to the show for a long time. There's a reason for that. This is now the third M2 Max that I've had with a simple $200 deductible. So I can't. I gotta say, something about accidental coverage. That's great. It's not my daily driver. I'm working on the Oryx these days, but for media production, and in fact, the reason I took it in to get repaired after my latest debacle was the coverage expires in February. We're recording now at the end of January. So I had a very narrow window to go to the Genius Bar and be like, I don't know what happened. Of course, they know me there now. They're like, we know what happened. Every once in a while, there'll be a new guy at the Genius Bar or a new gal, and he or she'll just come up to me and be like, you destroyed every single, like this time I did a great job. I got a new screen, I got a new keyboard, new motherboard, new RAM. I said, why didn't you just give me a new computer? They said, we didn't have them here. We had to go get it from California and ship it over. So if you can only have one computer and you maybe should be drinking out of a sippy cup like I should. The Apple Care Plus with accidental damage coverage. You got to get that accidental damage coverage is the way to go.
1,000%. Yeah. I've got a Mac Air M2
Nice.
that I bought, I think 2 or 3 months after the M2 chip came out. And it was a business expense. So the next sentence will make people cry, but I maxed it out with everything except for hard drive space, because I was like 2 terabytes ought to be enough for anybody at the moment. And then I started downloading a whole bunch of AI models, so maybe not so much. But I maxed it out, and like the only reason that I bought the M4 Pro 2-3 weeks ago was because I wanted a more up-to-date piece of hardware. The M2 still works. I still get like 18 hours of like 18 hours of battery life out of it doing AI things. It's ridiculous. It's not fair.
I have this. I was actually going to do a show on this in a couple of months. I have this sick idea because I keep looking at prices, given the just mad world we're currently living in, that the Mac Minis that are coming out, or certainly a Mac Studio, might just be the best like home or office internal on-prem AI server to run local LLMs. What I'm talking about.
100%. 100%.
Just money wise, I'm talking a value per pound or per dollar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is weird to say about Apple, because usually, la Apple tax, and like I don't know what dark deal they made with like whoever they buy, Samsung or whoever they get their RAM from, that they haven't significantly, at least to date of recording, raised their prices yet. But everybody, right? Framework just did. Everybody else did. So,
yeah, it's the strangest timeline, isn't it?
Damn you, Sam Altman. Damn you.
So the interesting thing that you said about the Mac Mini, now obviously we're recording this late January, to put a specific date on when we are recording this, literally the last 24 to 48 hours, this thing called Claudebot has exploded online, and people are actually rushing out to buy Mac Minis to run Claudebot on so that they can automate their entire workflow. Like it doesn't target any specific hardware, but all of the tech influencers online have said, if you buy a Mac Mini and you install this, you've got your own personal assistant on your own network. So it's interesting that you said about the Mac Mini being a really good value for money, pound for pound, dollar for dollar.
So what I see, I've been in meetings all morning. What does Claudebot do exactly?
Okay, so Claudebot, spelt like as if you have been clawed by something, so CLAWD without the E, bot, is the idea is it's an AI agent that you connect, or rather, it's not really an AI agent, it's a full suite of system setup that you can connect to a Claude instance, a Copilot instance, a local running LLM, whatever you want, and then you connect to it using WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal or Slack or anything like that, and then you leave that running on your home computer. You put Tailscale on it so you can connect to it wherever you are. You go out with your cell phone and you go, hey, personal AI assistant, I want you to check my emails every 2 hours and tell me via WhatsApp or Signal or whatever when an important one from a client comes in. Or, hey, Claudebot, I need you to write my invoice for me because I'm out at the bagel store and I'm picking up my coffee and I don't have access to bill.com or whatever. Create my invoice for me. Look through the files in this directory and figure out how many hours I spent on each project and create the invoice. Oh, while you're there, what I want you to do is I want you to book a flight for me so that I can get to, Scale or whatever, or Linux Fest Midwest. And I want to be able to get there the day before and then leave the day after. So you figure it out, find me the cheapest flights I can, go for it. And then the idea is that it goes away and does that. So it's like, it's the beginning of the sort of agentic life workflow, if that makes sense.
Oh, wow. All right. So apple.com/Mac Mini.
Use the promo code Coder Radio.
I wish. Uncle Tim, if you're listening, I'll take your money. We could even do like a Snow Leopard edition with no Swift running on it.
That would be awesome.
Actually, you know what? Someone did. So we're way off topic, but someone did send me a couple of years ago basically KDE Linux distro. It was one of the competitions I ran to be exactly like Snow Leopard, and I kind of forgot. I'm like, this is nice, but it's also, damn, this is old. Like, sometimes I play a lot of retro games in the rare times I have to actually game. Sometimes it is just nostalgia goggles. And it's like, having said that, nothing will ever beat the beauty that is the Snow Leopard, the actual Snow Leopard on the disc itself for Snow Leopard. That just amazing. So, all right. Well, while we all go, wow. My local Apple store. So I'm just playing around here, specking out Mac Minis. It's a 3-week wait now.
And that's it, right? Literally in the last 48 hours. It's crazy.
Oh my God. The business rep there has to be just like making his numbers at left and right with this stuff.
Absolutely.
All right. So we always wrap up with the same 2 questions. Ready?
I'm ready.
What is one tool you can't live without that you don't make?
Mm-hmm. So for me, it's I got a Kobo, so I use that just to read whenever I can. I like to just disconnect. It is a screen, but I see it as it's not an LCD or OLED screen. It's one of them that's designed to be easy on the eyes for reading. So like I'll go and sit in a little quiet corner. I call it my reading nook. It's not really a reading nook. It's just a corner with a lamp. I'll go and sit there and read on an evening just to sort of relax and switch off. Because I feel like too many people spend all of their lives staring at a screen somewhere. And I feel like it's a halfway house between going completely analog just before bed or whatever.
Absolutely. Yep. And I love the Kobo. I've been looking at perhaps alternatives to the Kindle. So, they're the Barnes & Noble one, right? Or no?
I'm not sure. I do know that they
might be
owned by Rakuten, which is,
okay.
I think, the Japanese one. Yeah.
Awesome. And the last question is, of course, where can people find you?
Well, so I'm not on X anymore for reasons that are personal to me. But if you're on Blue Sky, just type in gaprogman.com, GAPROGMAN. That goes all the way back to when I was at university. I was doing games programming, and you know how it is. You're all sitting around talking about silly things like if you were a superhero, what would your superpower be based on what you're studying? I was games programmer man, so gaprogman. I'm also on the Discord for Coder Radio, so definitely go check out the Coder Radio Discord. And if you want to learn about .NET stuff, .NETcore.show, DOTNETCORE.SHOW will get you the Modern .NET podcast.
Awesome. So, yeah, and we'll put all that in the show notes. And Jamie, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much.
All right, take it easy. Let's go buy our Mac Minis.
Absolutely.